Hi, Michaela. Nice to speak with you today.
Oh, it's so lovely to speak to you too, Carmel. Thank you for agreeing to yeah, to host this little interview. I'm really pleased to be
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you're lovely, and so I love any chance to get to chat with you.
Oh, bless you, and likewise, I love it too.
Yeah. So let's just hit it right off. Let's share your story. I
Hmm.
think that's worthwhile. You've got a compelling one.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm gonna start off with the time when I was actually living in the little tropical island of Mauritius, where I had been living. I'd spent most of my adult life there. And I was living there with my partner, my life partner, George, and we had two young children at that stage. And I really will never forget the Christmas time when George was taken ill suddenly, and he went into hospital, and they did some tests on him, and then the doctor just came straight out with it and just said, "Your husband has stage 4 lung cancer." And quite honestly, it felt like my whole world had just crumbled in that moment. Being in a developing country, I knew that care, this was 12 years ago now, more than 12 years ago, just over 12 years ago. And I knew that care was going to be, really problematic. And I was in my sort of late 30s at the time. And to be honest, this came as such a shock. It literally pulled the rug from under my feet.
There was no indication that he was sick at all before that.
Well, he'd had this kind of little lingering cough, but it was just always there. It seemed like it just had always been there.
Right.
Um, so, yeah, so we plodded on through this diagnosis, and things did get progressively worse, even though they had a lot of treatment, different things that they tried, the whole slash burn, everything. But 8 months later, he then passed away. And I had then joined this club that nobody really wants to be part of being a widow and a young widow, a young single mum in a country where there was just no provision, no support, no anything really. And not only that, it was a small island community, and it's like living in a fishbowl. Everybody knew, that I was, that George and I were partners. Everybody knew that George had passed away. Everybody just knew everything, and I felt like there was really no place to just hide and be with my grief, and be with my kids, my two sons. So my oldest was 8 at the time, and my youngest was just a baby, one and a half. So it was really, really, really tough at the time. So I stuck around in Mauritius because I felt that was the best place for us to be. And we stayed there for 2 years. And towards the end of those 2 years, I really had this strong feeling that I needed to go back to go and experience something different. I needed something different. I needed to be somewhere where people didn't kind of already have this idea of me before they kind of got to know me and meet me. And to be honest, I was ready to dip my toes into the dating world. And there was just no way I really could have done that there. So
What was it? What was it? It was just so small a
I
community that.
yeah, and I really did feel incredibly disloyal to even think about it, because it was almost like I was constantly just reminded, like every day, of who I was in that world. And just the thought of even, being going on a date with somebody else, it made me really anxious. But at the same time, I had those really deep desires that I felt ready. I mean, I felt incredibly lonely, and I missed the companionship. I missed having just somebody close to talk about my day, talk about the kids, um, and I I lived in quite a remote part of the island as well, so quite a on a sugar estate, if that makes sense, like sugarcane estate. So I didn't really have that many people around me. So I really felt like I'd like to just experience something else. And I was coming up to my 40th birthday as well. So I was feeling all of those, you know, what is it, like my midlife, the beginning of my midlife sort of crisis was coming in as well. I wanted to do something different.
Ooh,
So
that's so heavy. Does it have to be a crisis? Can it just be like time for something
time
new?
for something new. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, it didn't feel like a crisis. I mean, it felt like I was like ready to do something new, and so I did. So we packed, sold what we had, and packed everything up, and I came back to the UK, which is where I grew up, and I still had my family. My mom was still here, and just started everything from scratch again. Um, uh, yeah, and a whole big part of that journey. So as I say, I was turning 40, and it was almost like I felt like the clock had been turned back to when I was in my like 20s, because I went back to the house that I grew up in. I was living with my mom. Apart from the fact that I had two kids, I still felt, it made me feel like I'd gone back in time, and that I had
And
a chance to do things over, kind of thing. Kind of,
oh, okay, so there was like a positive sense of getting to kind of start over.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It was positive because um, I mean, I really had a determination to like to do this. I had this renewed energy, um, and it was difficult. Don't get me wrong, because I had no real friends when I first came back, and it was hard work getting the kids settled in a completely new environment. Finding work, finding a place to live of our own, just getting ourselves established again.
Mhm.
But I have to say that doing all of that, it made me, I guess it kind of gave me a new lease of life. And I started rediscovering things that I had loved when I was younger. So I took up netball again. I played for a team. you know,
Awesome.
yeah, it was great. It was great. And I loved that. I
So you
even,
got a chance to kind of rediscover yourself a little bit
yeah,
in this transition time.
totally, yeah, totally. Um, and discover, so rediscover the old parts of myself that I just hadn't, totally neglected. I hadn't really bothered about that so much. But the big part of it was actually the decision to begin dating again. And so where I live is
Mhm.
actually, it's a small town. It's a small town in a rural area.
So
And
you moved from a remote place to
yeah,
another kind of sort of
I'm,
remote place.
yeah, yeah. I'm not really a city person, I have to say. I mean, I like going to the city, but I can't live there.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it seemed like I was just like, well, how do I know? Because looking at the people around me, it was impossible to know, like, A, who was available, and B, who might be interested in me.
So were dating apps would have been
Um,
still they would have been around,
yeah, they were
but kind
around.
of a little bit new maybe.
Yeah, they were more, they were totally around. Oh yeah, I mean,
I'm just trying to think. I'm like going back in time. I'm like, I don't know, when did those things start?
20. Well, we're talking about 2012 here, so I
Okay.
think most of them started in the like 2000s,
Okay.
pretty much, yeah, like that, I would say. And even before that, there were still um, forums and all sorts of things,
Hmm.
chat rooms, and I don't know. But dating sites as such, yeah, Match was around, Plenty of Fish was around, and a
Right.
whole host of like niche dating sites was just starting as well. So I explored, yeah, all of the online dating sites.
Mhm.
I got myself onto pretty much any, any and every online dating site. And I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. And I just literally became like a student of dating. Um, I had a lot of fun. It was like it was something that I could do, that I could have, that was just for me. Especially when like the boys were asleep and they were in bed, and I could switch off from being a mum, I could switch off from my job, and then I just had this. And for a long time, I stayed in the virtual, the virtual realm.
Yeah.
It took me a while before I, felt brave enough and felt ready enough to actually meet somebody face to face, go and have a coffee or a drink or whatever. Yeah, that took me quite a long time, actually, I have to say.
I'm a little curious about, sort of what told you that you were ready,
Mm.
both to start, even chatting with new people, that you were ready to kind of think about dating, and
Mm.
then, to make that take that second step to like actually going for coffee and meeting people and not just talking.
Do you know something, Kamal? I've come to realize this more and more. I don't think readiness, like being ready, is
Mhm.
actually a, a point that you need to get to do something. It's like it
Okay.
was a case of me deciding, like, I'm good, I can do this, and I'm ready to do this. And we'll see what happens. And if we make a mistake or if something goes wrong, well, we'll have learnt something. So I kind of approached it in that, yeah, like open. What's the way they call it? Like a fixed, not a fixed, like a growth
Growth
mindset.
mindset.
Yes, exactly, in a growth
Yes.
mindset kind of way. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I I became, I realized when I was becoming when I was becoming a little bit bored and a bit like, well, this isn't going anywhere with these constant texting. And I was like, well, what actually is the point? And when I got really clear on what the point of what I wanted to do and what I needed, and that's really when it became a case of, okay, I actually am going to meet them and I'm going to see what they're like, and we'll take things from there. Yeah.
Great. So that brought you to the actual act of dating.
Hmm.
Um, Once you actually started dating, I know there's always pitfalls
Yes.
that we fall into. I'm still single. I'm going through dating. I hit plenty of pitfalls along the way. What were some of the ones that um, that kind of tripped you up, that you
Mm.
learned the biggest lessons from?
Okay, so saying that, so actually, there were loads. First of all, can I just say there were so many? But the ones that really stand out to me, there are two actually that stand out to me. So the first one was with a guy that I was texting with who lived out. So I live like in the southwest of the UK, and he was from London, and we had a really good connection. We spoke on the phone a lot, we texted each other. And then one day he said, let's meet up. And it so happened that I had a works dinner or lunch in like the nearby city. So I said, well, why don't you jump on the train and come to this meal with me? We'll meet and we'll have the dinner, and then if it, we can hang out in the city or whatever and see how it goes. We had the most magical date. It was amazing. It was beautiful. We were walking around and it was lovely. And the day was like from the morning till the evening, like the whole day. We were together and
Wow.
we didn't run out of things to say. And there was such a flow, and it just felt really good. Um, and then he went back on the train, and I never heard from him again.
What?
I never heard from him again. And I have no idea whatsoever what happened. Absolutely no idea what
Okay,
happened.
so what was the learning from that? Because
Mm,
I can see how that would really derail a person.
mm,
You know,
totally.
like
Yeah.
and it would be difficult to find, create your own closure
Hmm.
because you never got to find out
No.
why, what happened.
Yeah. Well, it took me a long time. It took me a really long time, actually, to really process all of that. But my takeaway was really that I I didn't know him. I actually didn't know anything about him. And my takeaway was really, it was a really, really important one actually, was that before I invest in somebody emotionally, before I really kind of give my heart to somebody, because I'd already invested emotionally before we'd even met.
Hmm.
And then the fact that we'd met was just confirming all of this. And so it's that, yeah, before doing that, like, work out what is a timeline that really works for me, you know, like now, the sort of advice that I would give is try and meet up sooner rather than later, and try not to
Before you make the emotional investment,
yes, yeah, before you make the emotional investment. And and if it's like, I mean, that was our first date. There's no way it should have lasted 8 hours. And he'd come all the way from, I mean, I just think, okay, well, that was crazy anyway, because he was very much fixed. He lived in London, I lived like 3 hours away. And I was just like, well, he had children, I had children. There was just too much in that situation to
right?
kind of, for me to already be at the stage where I'd totally fallen for him, hook, line, and sinker.
Ooh.
Yeah, so much involved in that. So it was a really good lesson in just measuring the relationship as it was going along. Yeah.
Curb your enthusiasm.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I just consider that it was like, and I always say this, it's like, if this is a gift. The universe gave me a big gift, because I think if I hadn't have had that experience, I probably would have continued to date in the same kind of way, in a way, and probably just, kept on throwing myself into these into these new relationships, and that's
I
it.
love that. I love that takeaway because we can get so disappointed when things don't work out. And if we focus on the disappointment, then we're not learning the lesson, right?
Absolutely.
Versus if we go into that, if we go into a mode where we ask, what can I take away from this? What can I learn from this experience so that this doesn't happen again?
Oh, absolutely, Carmel. And not only that, if we focus on the disappointment, what that does is it just shuts us down, shuts our heart down, and it makes us guarded. And that's like the worst. That's like a worse. What's it? A lose-lose situation for everybody then.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. I wanted to ask, what is different about dating, after you've been, because I mean,
Yeah.
there's dating after divorce, but I feel like dating after you've been widowed is different. There's a different mindset that comes to it.
I would agree. I think I would agree. Well, let me just put it this way. I think a lot of it depends on, like, what your relationship was like with your late partner or your late husband. Because
Of course.
if you had like a really amazing connection, a soul mate level love, and a really amazing relationship, it can it's a really hard thing to actually get yourself into that space where you feel ready to accept a new love. There's so much. I think also there's a lot of judgment from other people. Other people seem to think that they know, like, what is best for you, and sort of say, oh, you should be dating now, or on the other hand, they might be saying, oh, I can't believe you're dating already, and
You can't
you can't
win.
win. You really can't win. And and I guess the sort of the thing that maybe could make it really different from divorcing, in that situation, being divorced, is that you've kind of come from a really good experience of a relationship. You've got that, your most recent memory is of being close to somebody and having that really loving relationship. Whereas in a divorce, what I'm thinking is that maybe there's a gradual decline in the relationship. So that can involve feelings of bitterness, and there's grieving in both cases, definitely, because you're grieving the relationship that you could have had, and you're grieving your future. You've lost, in both cases you've definitely lost something. But I think there's probably more similarities than differences between the two, actually, especially in the case of, let's say, a widow who's actually didn't have a great relationship anyway, with her partner. In some way she didn't feel like fully expressed in that relationship. There were toxic qualities to that relationship. So in both cases, I think there is a certain amount of healing, and processing that needs to happen, and grieving that needs to happen before you can really be ready to receive and attract, a new love. Yeah.
Yeah. Does the grief ever go away? Like and the reason I
Mm.
ask that is because I think we can, there's the potential for someone to say, okay, I'm ready, I'm gonna start dating,
Hmm.
and then something like there's a trigger or something that makes them feel, oh, kind of go back to what they lost. And then, it might make a person think, oh, maybe I'm not really ready.
Well, I think here's what I've experienced. I mean, I think everybody experiences differently, but
Hmm.
what I've experienced is that the grief never fully goes away, but you sort of learn to put it into a place or a box of your heart. It's always there. It's always there, and you carry it with you. Um, and I think that's normal, because it's just a sign that you've loved and you've lost something. So it's actually a good thing. And I have to say that I'm so lucky, really, that my new love, my husband, Steve, he is also a widower. And when so his late wife is equally as much a part of our family as my late partner is. And so he's got two girls, I've got two boys. So there was a real kind of understanding, because I know that some people fear that that there's going to be, you're sort of going to feel like, or your new partner might feel like they're in competition with your dead husband, or whatever it is. So, which is totally not the case, because I mean, it's like having children, isn't it? When you have your first child, you think you can't possibly love another child as much. And then the second one comes along and it's like, wow, where did all this love come from? And your heart just expands to fill them both. And I really do feel that I can honestly say that I love them both equally, Steve and George. And yeah, I'm very blessed, I think, to have got to that place in particular. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. That's so beautiful. So, what was the dating process like? I know that you went through, there were some missteps and some lessons learned.
Hmm.
Um, at a certain point, and I'm not sure if this was while you were still dating or
Hmm.
after, I think it was probably after you got married, but you decided to take the lessons that you learned from your dating experience
Hmm.
and help other people. So what prompted you to do that?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, all along, Carmel, I have to say, since well, I mean, forever. I've always like loved helping my friends when they're in dire straits with their romantic lives and things like that, and I've always loved to do that. But when it came to well, I okay, so this the my it's I'd have to say that my journey was probably prompted when I came into contact with coaching, and I discovered that I absolutely loved coaching, and I found that that was a really great way of just helping people just to unlock their innate wisdom. And I wanted to, I actually wanted to do this professionally. And as I was, delving into my own treasure trove of life experiences, what I kept coming back to was this huge, like, massive event that happened in the middle of my life that really it had the potential to completely derail my whole life.
Yeah.
But what actually happened was that there were so many lessons and learnings in that journey that I just felt compelled. I was like, well, I'm sure that there are other women out there who, they were sort of merrily going along with their lives. They thought they had everything sorted out. The husband, the kids, the job, whatever, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, like this, it's not like that anymore, and everything is different, and everything has changed. And like, where do you start? Where do you start from there? And I said, right, I know that I can put all these things that I've learned, and I can actually help other people. I can help other women in particular, and mums of families, or women who've, they feel like they've got to a stage of life where they're perhaps thinking, well, that's it now for me. I'm just going to be on my own for the rest of my life. And it really doesn't have to be that way. And so that's really what inspired me to start to do this as a business. And I'm absolutely loving it. And I've been doing it now for 3 years. Yeah, 3 and a bit years now. And it's been great. It's been really great. Yeah.
Wonderful. What are some of the biggest successes that you've seen while you've been doing this?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I had there's three women jump to my mind. So one of them a divorcee, and she was a single mom, and she lived in Australia, and she'd been in the most toxic relationships, abusive relationships, and really through working together, she completely shifted into being able to attract really healthy relationships, and men who really respected her and really appreciated and valued her, and she really learnt her value. So that was great.
That's a big change
It's huge.
because that's a pattern that just like you
Yeah.
we keep doing what we've always done and wonder
Yeah.
why we're not getting a different result, right? And so
Yes.
she actually managed to change
Yeah.
a pretty destructive pattern in her life.
Oh, totally, totally. And and she said it's like it's like I can't unsee. You've opened my eyes now. I can't unsee these things. When she sees, when she even detects the first signs of things, she's straight away, her boundaries are set. So, and then as a result, these, otherwise toxic men, let's say, they sort of just disappear. They just go away, and she never sees them again.
How
And now
wonderful.
she understands why.
Yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So any more? Any others that you want to share?
Yeah, and so also I worked with a woman who really a gorgeous woman in her 50s. I mean, really gorgeous, and you would probably age her in her 30s, if that. But
Wow.
she was an actress, and she on stage she had loads of confidence, but in herself, she had no confidence with dating. And she she couldn't even, she didn't want to go online to date because she was afraid of being outed. Because I think what happened was the first time she put her profile onto Match.com, somebody sent her a message saying, "I can't believe you're on here." So someone had recognized her from something that she'd done. So she was like, "Oh no, take everything down." And then she came to me, she said, "Look, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I can't, I don't know what to do." So it was a case of really holding her hand, and taking really small baby steps, and really helping her just to build up her confidence to be the chooser that she actually had. She held the cards. It wasn't waiting for to be chosen and be picked by men, because they all, she had so much to offer, but she couldn't see that.
Right.
So I think that was a really big turnaround for her. And then to the point where she had like three or four, different men who were crazy about her. And and then, so she had new problems, and it was about sort of working out which of those were really the best sort of fit for her. Um, yeah, so that was a good turnaround for her as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a better problem to have.
Yes.
Beating them off with a stick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I'd love to know, what are some of your top tips for women who are, in midlife, starting to date again, and just maybe not sure where to start, how to get going on this journey.
Yeah, I think we live in an age where there's so much information around. There is really so much information, and I think there's almost too much, and we get very inundated, and then there's a lot of conflicting advice, and we're never really sure. I would always say to somebody who's thinking about dating, like, I'd always want to know, well, what's making you hold back on that? What is keeping you from actually doing it? And to actually sort of help them to get themselves clear on what it is that they actually, what is the outcome that they actually want, and who it is that they're really looking for. I think there are a lot of moving parts, and I think the tricky thing is when you're coming into this cold, and you sort of you don't know what you don't know. And you can totally do it the way I did it. I mean, I took 4 years to spent 4 years. I made all my mistakes, and I did what I needed to do. But I enjoyed the process, and I think it was a process that taught me so much. So, I
There's a
think
faster way.
there's definitely a faster way. Yes, there is definitely a way that you can shortcut, because it's a little bit like, it's like if you're going off into, you're going to explore a new country, for example. You can kind of, you're gonna go down a couple of blind alleys and get lost once or twice, and maybe end up somewhere where you shouldn't be. But if you've got like a tour guide with you, it just makes it so much easier to really navigate through, the dating world. So I probably would say that, reaching out for some help from a trusted mentor or friend, somebody who's been there and done that before, is a really good way of starting. Yeah, probably I would say that. Yeah.
Okay, and what about for those who are, they've been in it, they've been dating, and they're just not finding the right men?
Well, that's always it's a little bit counterintuitive what I'm going to say. So if you find that you've been dating for a while and you're not finding the right men, then the chances are that it's nothing to do with what's out there, but it's everything to do with what's in here and in here. And it's a question of aligning your mindset and aligning your energy, aligning that with what your heart really wants. And if one of those is out of whack, then you can search high and low, but it's it's something else.
So what does it really mean to align those with one another? What are
Yeah, so I guess once it's a really good question. It's a really good question. It's really hard to explain, but I'll give it a go. So when you're really clear on your vision and you've really worked out um, what it is that you want, there are always going to be things in your, a lot of hidden beliefs, a lot of old, yeah, old beliefs that
Mhm.
you've kind of embraced because they've kept you safe and you've sort of lived by these beliefs. But what is actually happening is that those beliefs are almost like putting on the brake pedal for actually getting to you where you want to go. So until you can get the pedals working in the right step, get yourself stepping on that gas pedal, it's there's always going to be some kind of conflict between what you're actually desiring and what's holding you back. And what's holding you back is generally what's in your mind. But there is another part, and that's the sort of the energetic part, which I
Mm.
also believe is a big part of attraction, because you attract what you are. So if you're
Mm.
finding that you're not attracting men, the sort of men that you would like to be attracting, then you just need to sort of flip it around and say, well, am I being that person who would be attractive to the people that I want to attract? And so
Mm.
it's like a constant, it's a balance really between ensuring that you are in alignment, and that's where the alignment comes in with what you want, with what you desire, with who you're being, and you know what you're trying to attract. So it all has to be in it, because otherwise it is like putting on the brake pedal and the gas pedal together, and you end up stuck and not really getting anywhere, and it just feels really hard then, and it doesn't
Mhm.
feel fun and light and like it should, like it
Yeah.
should.
Yeah, and it sounds like the beliefs are a big, like they're a foundational piece. And so how, what does it take to um, figure out what those brake pedal beliefs are?
Yeah. Well, oftentimes it takes having a good long look at your past results and your past patterns in your relationships and the sort of partners that you've attracted. Your sort of maybe the last three partners that you've attracted, and what it was that what happened. I mean, each person's individual and unique, but there will be some things that you can spot along the way. And very often as well, it can go back even further to the sort of relationship you had with your parents as a child. And that goes quite deep then. Those are very deep-seated beliefs about love and being lovable and being accepted and accepting yourself and self-love. I mean, it's a huge topic, Carmel, and I don't
I
think
I
we
believe
can
it.
really
You
get
already
into that right now.
No, maybe not. But it is, it's I think it's important to be aware,
Mm,
that these things are going on in the background, and we might not know it. And until, if we think we're taking all the right actions, and yet we're still not getting the results that we want, we need to look at what's going on behind the scenes. behind the curtain, so to speak.
100%, 100%. And it's and that's why that's why they're called our blind spots. We
Mm.
cannot see them for the life of us. We have no awareness of them. So, working with a coach or another professional who can actually help you to fully see, what those blind spots are. It's a huge wake up call, and it's a great spur then to do things differently and try things in a new way. Yeah,
Great, great.
for new results.
Yay for new results.
Yes.
So I know that you had a gift for everybody who's
I
watching.
Yes, I do. So, what I have, it's a booklet. It's a short guide to how to build intimacy again in a new relationship, and what it also covers is some of the fears that we might have around being intimate, and where they come from and how we can break those down. So I would love to gift that to anybody who's watching. And there will be a link, I'm sure, that will be shared with you as well at some point. Yeah.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this today. I learn something every single time I speak with you, so this is so great. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Thank you so much, Carmel. Thank you. I really appreciate you for taking the time as well to come and chat with me today as well.